The first scream was swallowed by the ocean. Not carried, not echoed. Swallowed. As though the island itself had opened an invisible mouth beneath the storm-dark waves and consumed the sound before it could reach another living soul. Far out near the private docks, hidden behind walls of rain and moonlight, a woman ran barefoot across soaked wooden planks, her white silk dress clinging to her skin like a second layer of fear. Blood mixed with seawater around her ankles. Her breath came apart in ragged gasps. Behind her, something moved. Not fast, not slow. Wrong. The security lights lining the dock flickered violently as the figure emerged from the darkness between them. Tall. Unnaturally thin. Its limbs seemed too long 1 second and impossibly distorted the next, as though the shadows themselves refused to hold its shape correctly. The woman turned just once. That was her mistake, because when she looked at it, she stopped running, and for one horrifying moment, the entire island went silent. No wind, no waves, no insects, only the sound of her breathing slowing, until even that disappeared. Then the lights went out, 3 days earlier. The island looked like paradise from the air. Camille Laurent watched through the window of the private seaplane as endless turquoise water shimmered beneath the afternoon sun like liquid glass. Tiny reefs glowed pale beneath the surface. The island itself emerged slowly from the horizon, lush jungle wrapped around ivory beaches and black volcanic cliffs softened by tropical flowers. Beautiful, exclusive, untouched, exactly what she had paid for, or at least what she hoped would finally silence the exhaustion eating through her life. Camille was 34 years old, elegant in the way only women born around wealth could be. Everything about her appeared composed, the silk travel suit, the diamond earrings subtle enough to whisper rather than scream luxury, the dark sunglasses hiding eyes permanently tired from years of cameras, parties, headlines, and pretending. The world knew her as the socialite heiress who smiled flawlessly beside politicians, actors, billionaires, and European royalty. But lately, Camille had begun to feel like a beautifully dressed ghost, drifting through rooms full of strangers. The scandals hadn't helped. Neither had the divorce. Especially not the humiliation that followed. Every magazine in Paris had devoured her pain publicly. Every social circle treated heartbreak like entertainment, disguised as sympathy. She was tired of being observed, tired of being desired, tired of being seen without ever being known. So when a discreet luxury travel company offered her a stay at an ultra-exclusive private island resort somewhere deep in the Pacific, Camille accepted immediately. No paparazzi, no media, no outside access, only silence, only ocean, only escape. Or so the brochure promised. The plane descended lower. From above, the resort looked unreal. Private villas sat hidden between palms and jungle vines, connected by narrow lantern-lit paths winding through tropical gardens. Infinity pools reflected gold sunlight directly into the sea beyond. The architecture blended modern luxury with ancient island stone, giving the entire place the appearance of something both expensive and strangely ancient. As if the resort had been carefully built atop something older, something buried. The thought unsettled her instantly. Camille frowned slightly and removed her sunglasses. For just a second. She thought she saw movement near the shoreline below. A dark figure standing ankle-deep in the water, watching the descending plane. But the moment the sunlight shifted against the ocean, it vanished. Probably a member of the staff. Still. A strange chill slipped through her body. By the time Camille arrived at the resort's main pavilion, the sun had begun sinking into shades of amber and rose. The island smelled of sea salt, orchids, rain-soaked wood, and something deeper beneath it all, earthy and damp like jungle soil after midnight storms. Staff members greeted her softly, almost reverently. Everyone smiled carefully here. Polite, controlled, too controlled. No one seemed relaxed, not even the guests. Camille noticed it immediately. At the Infinity Lounge overlooking the ocean, wealthy travelers sat beneath candlelight sipping champagne in near silence. Conversations remained hushed. Eyes wandered constantly toward the darkening tree line beyond the resort. A man laughed too loudly near the bar. 3 people turned instantly to look at him, then quickly looked away again. Strange. Very strange. "Welcome to Elysian Cove, Miss Laurent," the resort manager said warmly. His name was Adrian Vale. Tall, impeccably dressed, calm in the unsettling way expensive hotels train their management to be. But there was tension beneath his smile, subtle and persistent, like someone hiding exhaustion behind professionalism. "We hope you'll find peace here." Peace. The word lingered oddly. Camille smiled faintly. That depends on whether peace exists anymore. For the first time, Adrian's expression flickered. Not confusion. Recognition. As if he understood exactly what she meant. Then it vanished. "You'll be staying in Villa 9, he said smoothly. "It's our most private accommodation." Private. Another word that suddenly didn't feel comforting. A young island employee guided Camille through narrow stone paths, illuminated by hanging lanterns swaying softly in the ocean breeze. Jungle leaves whispered overhead. Somewhere far deeper within the island, unseen birds cried out in strange rhythmic patterns. The further they walked from the main pavilion, the quieter everything became. Too quiet. The employee carrying her luggage never once looked toward the jungle. Not once. Even when branches cracked somewhere deep within it. Camille noticed. "Are there animals here?" she asked casually. The employee hesitated. "A few." "What kind?" Another pause. Then, "You shouldn't walk alone after midnight, miss." Camille let out a soft laugh. "That wasn't my question." But the employee said nothing else. Villa 9 sat completely isolated near the northern shoreline of the island. The architecture was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling glass walls, polished volcanic stone, candle-lit reflecting pools, and a private deck stretching directly toward the beach below. Waves rolled gently across the sand beneath silver moonlight, beginning to emerge across the horizon. It was paradise. Perfect. And yet the moment Camille stepped inside, a strange pressure settled in her chest, like entering a room where someone had just been standing seconds earlier. The employee placed her luggage down quickly, almost nervously. "If you need anything," he said quietly, "please contact the main pavilion before midnight." "Why before midnight?" But he was already leaving. The villa door closed, and Camille was alone. At first, the silence felt luxurious. She poured herself wine, opened every window to the ocean breeze, slipped into the infinity pool beneath deepening twilight while waves whispered below the cliffs. For the first time in months, her shoulders relaxed. No cameras, no expectations, no one demanding pieces of her, only darkness and water. But as night fully consumed the island, the atmosphere began changing, subtly, almost imperceptibly. The jungle sounds faded first, then the wind, then even the ocean seemed quieter somehow. Camille stood barefoot inside her bedroom, staring toward the moonlit shoreline outside the glass walls, when she noticed something strange near the water. A figure, far down the beach, standing completely still, watching the villa. Her breath caught slightly, probably another guest, but no. The figure looked too tall, too narrow, and though the moon illuminated the shoreline clearly, the figure itself remained strangely dark, as if the light refused to touch it. Camille stepped closer to the glass. The figure didn't move, didn't wave, didn't leave. It simply stood there, watching. A cold sensation slid slowly down her spine. She reached for her phone instinctively. The figure was gone. Not walking away. Gone. The beach below was suddenly empty. Camille stared for several long seconds, her pulse uneven, then laughed softly at herself. Stress, exhaustion, too much champagne on the flight. That had to be it. Still. Before going to bed, she locked every door in the villa. Around 2:13 a.m., Camille woke suddenly, not from sound, from feeling. That horrible instinct humans carry deep inside themselves, the ancient animal awareness that whispers, "You are not alone." Her bedroom was dark except for pale moonlight spilling across the floor. The ocean outside had become violent somehow. Waves crashed harder now. Wind hissed through palm trees. And somewhere beyond the glass walls, something moved. Camille sat upright slowly. Her heartbeat thickened. There it was again. Movement outside, near the edge of the villa deck. She held her breath. A shadow crossed briefly past the window. Too large to be human. Then, 3 slow knocks echoed against the glass. Camille froze. Not loud, not aggressive, almost gentle. 3 precise taps. Tap, tap, tap. Her mouth went dry. No one should have been outside her villa at this hour. Slowly, trembling slightly despite herself, Camille turned toward the glass doors facing the moonlit deck. Nothing was there. Only darkness, only swaying palms, only ocean. Then she noticed the footprints. Wet footprints. Leading from the beach, directly to her bedroom window, and stopping there, as if something had stood outside watching her sleep. For a very long time, Camille did not sleep again after the footprints appeared. She remained sitting against the headboard with every light in the villa turned on, staring at the glass walls while the ocean raged beyond them. Her fingers stayed wrapped tightly around the stem of a wineglass she had no memory of pouring. The footprints remained outside until sunrise. That was the detail she could not rationalize away. If someone had approached the villa during the night, the tide should have erased the marks. Rain should have softened them. Wind should have disturbed them. But no. When dawn finally bled slowly across the island, the prints still stretched across the wet sand beneath her deck with impossible clarity. Long, bare, almost human. Almost. Camille stepped outside carefully just after sunrise, silk robe tied tightly around her body despite the tropical heat. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and wet jungle leaves. Sunlight turned the water gold. Paradise again. The island had transformed completely with daylight, as if the terror of the night had been imagined. Birds called softly overhead. Palm trees shimmered lazily in the wind. Somewhere in the distance, faint music drifted from the resort restaurant. But the footprints were still there. She crouched near them slowly. Too large. The shape disturbed her most. The impressions looked wrong somehow, longer at the heel, deeper near the toes, almost as though whatever made them carried its weight unnaturally. Camille swallowed, then noticed something else. The prints ended beneath her bedroom window, not turned away, not continued elsewhere, ended, as if the thing standing there had simply vanished. A strange nausea curled through her stomach. "Miss Laurent?" Camille flinched violently at the voice behind her. One of the resort employees stood several feet away holding a breakfast tray. Young, nervous, the same employee who had escorted her to the villa the previous evening. His eyes immediately dropped toward the footprints. For one horrifying second. Fear flashed across his face. Real fear. Then he masked it quickly. "You should not stand near the beach this early," he said quietly. Camille rose slowly. "Why?" The employee hesitated. "The tide is unpredictable here. That's not what frightened you." His throat moved slightly. But again, he said nothing. Breakfast at Elysian Cove felt strangely subdued. The resort's open-air dining pavilion overlooked endless turquoise water sparkling beneath the morning sun. White linen curtains drifted gently in the breeze, while wealthy guests sipped espresso beside crystal glasses of fresh juice and tropical fruit carved into impossible perfection. Everything looked luxurious, perfect. And yet tension lingered beneath the beauty like something rotting beneath polished marble. Camille noticed people watching one another constantly, not openly, subtly, nervously. One woman sitting near the edge of the pavilion appeared deeply shaken. Her hands trembled around her coffee cup. A man beside her whispered something urgently before noticing Camille observing them. Instant silence, then carefully forced smiles. The atmosphere unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. Adrian Vale approached her table moments later, immaculate as always in tailored white linen despite the tropical humidity. "Did you sleep well, Miss Laurent?" The question felt deliberate. Camille studied him carefully before answering. "There were footprints outside my villa this morning." Adrian's expression did not change. "That can happen near the northern shoreline. They led directly to my bedroom." A pause. Then, "The island attracts sleepwalkers sometimes." Camille almost laughed. What does that even mean? But Adrian merely offered a calm smile. "If there's anything disturbing you, perhaps avoid walking alone at night." Again with that warning, again without explanation. Camille leaned back slowly. "You know something is wrong here." For the first time, Adrian looked tired, not physically, emotionally, like a man carrying knowledge too heavy to speak aloud. "This island," he said carefully, "affects people differently." Then he stood. Conversation over. The heat became oppressive by afternoon. Heavy clouds gathered slowly above the island, while distant thunder rolled across the horizon far out at sea. Most guests retreated indoors or disappeared toward private villas hidden throughout the jungle. Camille tried distracting herself. Spa treatments, champagne by the pool, reading beneath shaded cabanas. None of it worked. Everywhere she went, she felt watched. Not by people, by something patient, something studying her. By late afternoon, curiosity overcame caution. She left the main resort pathways and wandered farther along the northern side of the island, where the jungle grew denser and fewer villas occupied the shoreline. The air changed there, cooler, darker. The tropical beauty remained, but something beneath it felt untouched by luxury. Ancient trees twisted overhead, roots breaking through volcanic stone paths, as if reclaiming the island inch by inch. Camille noticed small symbols carved into some of the rocks lining the trail, circular markings, strange patterns, not decorative, warnings. She reached down to touch one when a voice behind her spoke sharply. "You shouldn't touch those." Camille turned quickly. An older woman stood several feet away, partially hidden beneath the shade of massive palms. Unlike the other guests, she wore no jewelry, no designer resort clothing, no carefully curated elegance. Simple white linen covered deeply tanned skin, weathered by years of ocean wind. Her eyes unsettled Camille immediately. They looked terrified. "Who are you?" Camille asked. "I live here." "At the resort?" The woman gave a strange smile. "No one truly lives here." Thunder rumbled overhead again. The woman glanced toward the jungle behind Camille, then lowered her voice. "The island watches newcomers closely." A cold sensation slipped through Camille's chest. "What does that mean?" The woman stepped closer. "Have you heard it yet?" "Heard what?" But before the woman could answer, distant voices approached along the trail behind them. Resort staff. The old woman's expression changed instantly. Fear. Pure fear. "You must not let it see you alone after midnight," she whispered urgently. Then she disappeared into the jungle. Not walked away. Vanished. Camille stood frozen beneath the darkening sky. Somewhere deep within the trees, something cracked. A branch. Heavy. Too heavy. She turned sharply toward the sound. Nothing. Only shadows. Only jungle. But the feeling returned immediately. That terrible feeling. Being watched. That night, the ocean looked wrong. Camille stood alone on her villa deck, wrapped in a silk robe, while moonlight spread silver across the violent water below. Wind hissed through the palms harder than before. Storm clouds moved slowly across the horizon, swallowing stars one by one. The sea no longer felt beautiful. It felt alive, breathing, waiting. She couldn't explain why the sight disturbed her so deeply. Every instinct inside her whispered the same impossible thing. Do not go near the water. And yet she couldn't stop staring at it. Near midnight, Camille poured herself another glass of wine and tried reading beside the bedroom windows. That was when she heard it. A sound from outside, not footsteps, dragging, slow, wet. Her pulse spiked instantly. The sound moved across the deck outside the villa, then stopped. Silence. Camille stood slowly from the chair. The entire villa suddenly felt too quiet. Even the insects outside had stopped. She approached the glass doors carefully, every nerve tightening. Darkness swallowed most of the deck beyond the soft golden interior lights. At first she saw nothing. Then, movement near the shoreline. Several figures stood ankle-deep in the ocean below the villa, motionless, watching the resort. Camille's breath caught painfully in her throat. There were too many of them. 5, maybe 6. Tall silhouettes partially hidden by moonlight and crashing waves. Guests? No. The proportions looked wrong. Too thin. Too still. No human being stood that perfectly motionless against violent water and wind. Then one of them moved. Its head tilted upward slowly, toward her. Camille stumbled backward instinctively. The lights inside the villa flickered violently once, twice. Then every light facing the beach went dark. The figures vanished instantly into blackness. Camille's breathing became shallow. No. No, no, no. This wasn't stress anymore. This wasn't imagination. Something was out there. And deep inside herself, Camille already knew the most horrifying truth of all. It had noticed her noticing it. Around 3:07 a.m., Camille woke again, this time to whispering. Soft, unintelligible, right outside the bedroom walls. She sat upright instantly. The whispering continued beneath the sound of crashing waves, multiple voices, not speaking words, more like breath trying to imitate language. Camille grabbed her phone shakily and activated the flashlight. The whispers stopped immediately. Silence returned. Then, very softly, something scratched against the glass. Long, slow, deliberate. Camille forced herself to look toward the windows and saw a hand pressed against the outside of the glass. Too large. Far too large. Its fingers were impossibly long and pale, like something that had spent centuries beneath dark water. Camille screamed. The hand disappeared instantly, but before the darkness outside swallowed everything again, she saw a face standing beyond the reflection of her room, watching her, smiling. Morning arrived like a lie. Sunlight flooded the island in brilliant gold, illuminating turquoise waves and pristine white sand so vividly that the terror of the night almost felt impossible. Resort staff moved gracefully through open-air pathways carrying silver trays and fresh flowers. Somewhere near the southern villas, soft piano music drifted through the humid breeze. Paradise again. That was the island's cruelest talent. It transformed horror into doubt by daylight. Camille stood motionless before the bathroom mirror inside Villa 9, staring at herself as if trying to recognize the woman reflected there. She looked exhausted. Her dark hair fell loosely around pale skin untouched by sleep. Shadows bruised the skin beneath her eyes. But it wasn't exhaustion that unsettled her most. It was the expression. Fear had changed her face overnight. And beneath the fear, something else had appeared. Obsession. Because despite everything she had seen, the hand, the figures, the face outside the glass, part of her still wanted answers more than escape. That realization terrified her. A soft knock at the villa door startled her sharply. Camille opened it cautiously to find Adrian Vale standing outside, perfectly composed as always. Though this morning the calm looked thinner somehow. "You missed breakfast," he said gently. Camille folded her arms immediately. "There was someone outside my villa last night." Adrian remained silent. "I saw them." Still nothing. Anger flared through her fear. "Either your island has intruders wandering around after midnight," she snapped, or everyone here is losing their minds." A shadow passed briefly across Adrian's expression. Then he stepped quietly inside the villa and closed the door behind him. That small action chilled her instantly. "You need to stop looking for explanations that make sense," he said softly. Camille stared at him. "What does that mean?" Adrian glanced toward the ocean outside the glass walls. "The island has existed for a very long time." "That doesn't answer my question." "No," he admitted quietly. "It doesn't." His eyes shifted toward the beach below. For a moment, he looked genuinely frightened. Then he lowered his voice. "Have you noticed the cameras?" Camille frowned slightly. "What cameras?" Adrian hesitated. "The resort security system has been malfunctioning for weeks." A strange heaviness settled inside her chest. "How?" "The recordings disappear between midnight and sunrise." Camille felt her pulse quicken. "All of them?" "Yes." "And you're still allowing guests to stay here?" Adrian looked at her carefully. "We can't close the island." The wording struck her immediately. Not "we won't." We can't. Before she could ask another question, Adrian's phone vibrated sharply in his pocket. He glanced at the screen, and for the first time since meeting him, Camille saw genuine alarm break through his controlled demeanor. "I need to go," he said quickly. "What happened?" But Adrian was already moving toward the door. Then he paused. Without turning around, he said quietly, "If you hear voices tonight, do not answer them," and left. The security room sat beneath the main pavilion near the resort's private marina. Camille found it 2 hours later almost by accident, or perhaps because curiosity had already begun pulling her toward things she should have avoided. The hallway leading downstairs felt strangely abandoned compared to the polished luxury upstairs. The air grew colder beneath the resort. Dim fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. She noticed one of the security doors partially open. Inside, several employees stood gathered around surveillance monitors speaking in tense whispers. One screen flickered violently with static. Another showed only darkness despite bright daylight outside. A third camera displayed the northern shoreline near Villa 9. Camille froze. Something moved briefly near the edge of the frame. Tall, distorted, gone. One of the employees noticed her instantly. The reaction was immediate panic. "You can't be down here," he blurted. Camille stepped forward. "What was that?" "No guests are allowed in this area." "I just saw someone on that camera." The employees exchanged nervous looks. No one answered. Then Camille noticed something else. Every single camera facing the jungle had stopped working completely. Black screens, static, distortion. But the cameras facing the beach disturbed her most, because every few seconds, something appeared near the shoreline. Not clearly, never fully visible, just enough to trigger the primitive terror buried deep inside human instinct. Shapes standing too still beside the water. Figures appearing for single frames before vanishing again. Watching. Always watching. "What is happening on this island?" Camille whispered. No one replied. Then one of the security monitors emitted a sharp burst of static so violent it made everyone flinch. The screen distorted, lines twisted across the image, and for one horrifying second, a face appeared, pale, sunken, smiling directly into the camera. Camille's stomach dropped. The employees shut the monitor off immediately. Silence swallowed the room. One of the men crossed himself under his breath. Another refused to look toward the screens anymore. Camille backed away slowly. This place was hiding something far worse than rumors or hallucinations, and everyone here already knew it. That evening, rain began falling softly across the island. Not enough for a storm, just enough to blur the world. Camille sat alone beneath the covered terrace of the resort lounge, listening to jazz drift quietly through candle-lit air while wealthy guests pretended nothing was wrong. But now she noticed the details more clearly. No one stayed outside after dark. No one walked near the northern beach. And every single conversation died the moment the jungle noises stopped. Because the jungle always stopped eventually, every night, at almost exactly the same time. Tonight it happened at 11:42 p.m. 1 second, insects screamed invisibly through the trees. The next, silence, complete. The effect on the guests was immediate. Several people visibly stiffened. One woman quietly stood and left her untouched drink behind. Another guest began locking the doors leading toward the beach. Camille's heartbeat slowed uneasily. No one questioned the silence. That meant they expected it. Then she saw something outside the pavilion windows. Far down near the shoreline, a figure standing beneath the rain, watching the resort. Camille stood slowly from her chair. No one else seemed willing to look directly at it, as though acknowledging the figure made it more real. She stepped closer to the glass. The silhouette remained perfectly motionless despite the rain and wind. Tall, thin, wrong. Then another shape emerged beside it, then another. Her breathing caught. There were several now, standing at the edge of the water, watching. One guest near the bar noticed Camille staring. His face drained of color instantly. "Don't," he whispered sharply. Camille turned toward him. "What are they?" But the man shook his head violently. "You shouldn't let them know you can see them." Fear rippled painfully through her chest. "What do you mean?" The man looked genuinely horrified now. "Most people can't." Then he walked away. That night, Camille refused to stay inside the villa. Fear had transformed into something more dangerous now. Determination. Around midnight, she left Villa 9 wrapped in a light coat and followed one of the lantern-lit paths leading toward the northern shoreline. The island looked completely different after dark. The luxury disappeared. What remained felt ancient. The jungle loomed heavily on both sides of the path, black vines twisting through massive trees that blocked most moonlight from reaching the ground. The ocean sounded louder here, violent somehow. The deeper she walked, the colder the air became. Then she noticed the smell. Salt water, rot, and something metallic beneath it. Blood. Camille slowed her steps. Ahead, she spotted movement between the trees. A resort employee, one of the night staff. He moved quickly along the jungle path carrying lanterns and supplies. Then suddenly, he stopped, completely still. Camille frowned. The man was staring into the darkness beyond the path. At first, she saw nothing. Then something shifted between the trees. A silhouette, towering, watching him. The employee began trembling visibly. Very slowly, he lowered his gaze to the ground, like prey refusing eye contact with a predator. Camille's pulse thundered. The figure stepped forward slightly from the darkness. Moonlight touched part of it briefly. Skin too pale, limbs too long, eyes reflecting no human emotion at all. The employee whispered something shakily in a language Camille didn't understand. The figure tilted its head, then vanished back into the jungle. Just like that. The employee collapsed to his knees, sobbing quietly. Camille stumbled backward in horror. A branch snapped beneath her foot. The employee looked up sharply. So did something else. Deep within the jungle, two pale eyes opened in the darkness and fixed directly on her. The eyes did not blink. They remained suspended in the darkness between the trees like fragments of moonlight trapped inside something ancient and starving. Camille could not breathe. The jungle around her had gone impossibly still again. Even the wind seemed afraid to move. The resort employee on the ground whispered frantically through tears, refusing to look directly at the thing hidden among the trees. "Please," he murmured weakly. "Please leave." The pale eyes shifted slowly toward him, and Camille understood instantly. He wasn't speaking to her. A low sound emerged from deeper within the jungle. Not a growl, not human breathing. Something wet, hollow, ancient. Every survival instinct inside Camille screamed at her to run, Instead, she stood frozen beneath swaying lantern light as the darkness between the trees began changing shape. At first, it looked almost human. Tall, thin, motionless. Then the proportions shifted unnaturally. Its limbs elongated slightly. Its shoulders bent too far forward. Parts of its body disappeared into shadow, while others emerged impossibly pale beneath fractured moonlight. The thing stepped closer. Camille's stomach twisted violently. Its skin looked wrong, not diseased. Drowned. Like flesh preserved beneath black ocean water for centuries. And its eyes. God. Its eyes held intelligence, not animal hunger, recognition. It knew her. The realization hit Camille with such force, she nearly stumbled backward. The employee suddenly screamed. The sound shattered the silence violently, and the creature moved. Not toward him, toward Camille. The lanterns lining the jungle path exploded instantly. Darkness swallowed everything. Camille ran. Rain erupted from the sky moments later. Violent, tropical rain. The island transformed instantly into chaos. Wind screaming through the trees, waves crashing against volcanic cliffs, lightning tearing open the heavens in brilliant white fractures. Camille sprinted blindly through jungle pathways slick with mud and rainwater, branches clawing against her skin as terror drove her forward. Behind her, something followed. Not running. Gliding. She could hear it moving through the trees without disturbing them, hear the wet dragging sound behind her growing steadily closer. Lightning flashed. For one horrifying second, Camille saw its silhouette beside her between the trees, towering, distorted. Its limbs bent at impossible angles as it moved. Then darkness swallowed it again. Camille gasped sharply and nearly slipped off the narrow stone path leading toward the resort. The island no longer resembled paradise. It looked cursed. The luxury villas stood dark beneath the storm. Palm trees bent violently in the wind. Guests screamed somewhere in the distance as power across the island flickered uncontrollably. Then, everything went black. The entire resort lost power at once. Only lightning illuminated the island now, and with every flash, Camille saw them. Figures standing throughout the storm, near the beach, between the villas, watching from the jungle, dozens, too many, all pale. All impossibly still despite the violent rain. The island was full of them. Camille reached the main pavilion soaked and shaking. Inside, terrified guests crowded beneath emergency lanterns, while resort staff attempted desperately to restore power. Some people cried openly now. Others stared silently toward the windows where shadows moved constantly beyond the rain. Adrian Vale stood near the center of the pavilion issuing frantic instructions. When he saw Camille, genuine relief crossed his face. "You saw it," he said immediately. Not a question. Camille grabbed his arm. "What are they?" Thunder shook the building violently. Adrian looked toward the storm outside, then finally answered. "They were here before the resort." The room seemed colder suddenly. "The island belonged to them long before we built anything here," he continued quietly. "The locals abandoned this place generations ago." "Why?" Adrian's expression hollowed. "Because people kept disappearing." Lightning illuminated the pavilion windows in violent white light. For one terrible instant, Camille saw several pale figures standing outside the glass, watching everyone inside. Some guests screamed. The figures vanished again. "They come from the water during storms," Adrian whispered, "and they choose people." Camille felt sick. "What happens to the people they choose?" Adrian didn't answer, because he didn't need to. Hours passed beneath the storm. No boats could leave the island. No helicopters could land. The ocean surrounding Elysian Cove had become monstrous, waves slamming violently against cliffs, while black clouds swallowed the horizon completely. They were trapped, and whatever lived on the island knew it. Around 3 a.m., the whispers began. Soft at first, drifting through the walls beneath the sound of rain. Guests froze one by one as the voices spread across the pavilion. Not language, invitation. Camille felt the sound inside her chest rather than hearing it normally. The whispers knew things, knew loneliness, knew grief, knew exactly which wounds to touch. A woman near the window suddenly stood. Her expression had gone strangely peaceful. "Do you hear that?" she whispered softly. Before anyone could stop her, she began walking toward the doors. 2 staff members grabbed her instantly. She screamed violently, not in fear, in rage. "Let me go!" Her voice sounded wrong somehow, almost layered with another voice beneath it. Then every window in the pavilion shattered simultaneously. Guests screamed. Rain exploded inward across the marble floors, and something entered the building. Not fully visible, more absence than shape. The temperature dropped so violently Camille saw her own breath. The emergency lanterns flickered wildly, and deep within the darkness near the entrance, a pair of pale eyes opened, looking directly at Camille, choosing her. The storm reached its peak before dawn. Camille ran again, but this time she understood there was nowhere left to escape. The island itself belonged to the thing hunting her. The jungle paths twisted unnaturally as if guiding her somewhere specific. The rain blurred everything into silver and black. Lightning flashed constantly overhead, illuminating glimpses of pale figures watching from between the trees. Always watching, always waiting. Then suddenly, the jungle opened. Camille stumbled into a hidden clearing deep within the island she had never seen before. Ancient stone ruins stood half swallowed by vines and roots. Strange circular symbols covered broken walls blackened by time and seawater. At the center of the clearing stood a massive stone structure resembling an altar, and surrounding it, bones, human bones. Hundreds. Camille's breath caught in horror. This was not a resort island. It never had been. This place was feeding ground. A violent gust of wind swept through the clearing. Then the creature emerged fully from the darkness. Camille stared at it beneath crashing rain and fractured lightning, and finally understood why no camera could capture it properly. Because the human mind rejected its shape. Its body shifted constantly between forms, sometimes almost human, sometimes horrifyingly wrong. Water streamed endlessly from pale skin, stretched too tightly across elongated limbs. Its face looked unfinished somehow, as though several different faces existed beneath the surface simultaneously, but its eyes remained the same. Ancient. Hungry. Lonely. The creature stepped closer, and for the first time, it spoke clearly. "You came here empty." Its voice sounded like multiple voices speaking underwater. Camille trembled violently. "What are you?" Lightning exploded overhead. The creature tilted its head slowly. "We are what remains." The jungle around them seemed to breathe. "We watched your kind build paradise above our grave," it whispered. "We watched you come here lonely, broken, grieving." Another step closer. "And we learned hunger from you." Camille felt tears mixing with rain on her face. The thing's gaze never left her. "You were already drowning long before you arrived." The words struck something deep inside her chest, because they were true. That was the horror. Not the creature. Not the island. The fact that it had seen directly into her emptiness, and understood it perfectly. The storm screamed around them. The creature extended one pale hand toward her. "Stay." Behind it, countless pale figures slowly emerged from the jungle, watching silently, waiting. Camille closed her eyes. For one terrible moment, surrender felt peaceful. No more loneliness, no more pretending, no more pain, just silence, ocean, darkness, belonging. Then somewhere far beyond the storm, the first light of dawn appeared, a thin line of gold across the horizon. The creature froze instantly. The figures behind it began retreating slowly toward the jungle shadows. Camille opened her eyes. The thing stared at her one final time, not angry, almost mournful. Then it whispered softly, "You will carry us with you now," and vanished. 3 weeks later. The official statement described the incident as a tropical evacuation caused by severe weather damage. The resort closed permanently. No interviews were given. No investigations continued. Too many guests refused to speak about what happened. Some disappeared entirely after returning home. Camille returned to Paris changed in ways no one could understand. The world welcomed her back with cameras, champagne parties, fashion galas, and empty conversation. But none of it felt real anymore. Because every night, she still heard the ocean. Sometimes she woke drenched in seawater despite sleeping miles from any shore. Sometimes mirrors reflected movement behind her that vanished when she turned. And sometimes, late at night, she noticed wet footprints outside her apartment windows. Impossible footprints. Waiting there until sunrise, as though something had followed her home from the island, watching, patient, hungry, not for flesh, for loneliness. Years later, the island still appears online sometimes. Different names, different owners. Always advertised as paradise. Always exclusive. Always beautiful. And somewhere beyond the polished photographs and luxury promises, something ancient still waits beneath the jungle and the waves. Watching new boats arrive. Watching lonely people step onto the shore. Waiting for nightfall, waiting to be seen again.